Aloha! My name is Darren Lerner, and I am the director of the University of Hawaiʻi Sea Grant College Program, otherwise known as Hawaiʻi Sea Grant. Hawaiʻi Sea Grant supports an innovative program of research, education, and extension services directed toward the improved understanding and stewardship of coastal and marine resources of the state, region, and nation. This is Hawaiʻi Sea Grant Podcast number 7, Growing Coral.
Aloha, my name is Rachel, and I'm a communications specialist at Hawaiʻi Sea Grant. Welcome to our 321 podcast. This podcast features research supported by Hawaiʻi Sea Grant. Each episode highlights a new project and the people that make that project possible. I'll ask these researchers to define 3 words commonly used in their research, give them 2 minutes to explain how their research benefits communities here in Hawaii, and end by asking them to provide one thing they know about each other than their research. So, 3 words, 2 minutes, and 1 thing. It's a 321 podcast. We're learning about coral in this podcast. Here to share their research are Peter Marko and his graduate fellow, Claire Lewis. Let's start by introducing yourselves.
Hi, my name is Peter, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Biology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa.
Hi, I'm Claire, and I'm a graduate fellow in the Department of Biology.
So can you briefly tell me what your project is about?
Sure. So we look at experimentally determining the best conditions to grow some species in the genus Pavona, which is found here in Hawaii, and we're trying to determine how best to grow them so that they can survive in reef conditions in the future.
So 3 phrases you used a lot in your research are oxidative stress, active restoration, and morphological variation. Can you explain what these mean?
Sure, so I'll start with oxidative stress. So corals live in tight partnership with photosynthetic algae that live inside their cells. And normally these algae have a really good system of keeping these really dangerous molecules called reactive oxygen species under control, and they generally have that in a good kind of molecular process for doing that. When you get high temperatures or high light, or the 2 in combination, the scales start to tip and they produce too many of these reactive oxygen species, and these are really damaging for the coral's cells, and it can do all kinds of really troubling things like degrade DNA or break down cell membranes. And so when that happens, the coral gets rid of those algae, and when that happens, the coral has lost its main food source and it's effectively starving. So if you leave them like that for too long, the corals will die.
What about active restoration?
Well, like on coral reefs all around the world, in Hawaii, there's been quite a bit of recent damage caused by bleaching events, which is a consequence of global climate change. And because in Hawaii, many of the corals are extremely slow growing, resource managers and reef managers have turned to active restoration, which is the process of actively bringing corals into nurseries and fragmenting them and growing them into small colonies so that they can be placed back out on the reef. And they're grown under nursery conditions that maximize their growth rates, so much better conditions than they would experience in the field. And this is a way to jumpstart the restoration process, but one that's particularly important here in Hawaii because of the slow growth of our corals.
And morphological variation, how does that come into it?
So one of the species of coral that we're really interested in is Pavona varians, and as that name suggests, it has a great deal of morphological variation, and really that just means that it can take lots of different forms and lots of different shapes, morphology just meaning what they look like. And so what we're trying to see is, are there particular shapes or particular forms that make these corals better suited to survive in high temperature or high light environments, which they're likely to experience in the future.
Well, then tell me in 2 minutes or less, how does this research benefit the communities here in Hawaii?
Well, coral reefs provide many different things that we call ecosystem services to the people that live in Hawaii. They're physical structures that protect shorelines from wave action, and their physical structure provides homes for many species that we depend on, particularly fisheries species that are important to the economy of Hawaii.
It's also something that we just like to enjoy. As people living in Hawaii, people like to go snorkeling, and the reefs themselves are just beautiful, but also as the tourism industry heavily relies on reefs and reef structures and people snorkeling and going to look at them as well.
So it's economy as well as ecology.
Yes.
Right. And anything we can do to increase the recovery or resilience of those reefs is going to be of great benefit to the people of Hawaii.
Well, that's a wrap. But before we go, we want to ask you, what's one thing, Peter, that you know about Claire other than her research?
Well, she really loves cheese. So much so that in a lab party, we had a cheese tasting of cheeses from around the world.
Wonderful. Cheese is my downfall, too. I love cheese. And Claire, what's one thing you know about Peter other than his research?
Peter really loves Star Wars. And you can't actually see this, but he's wearing a Star Wars t-shirt right now.
Excellent.
True.
Which is your favorite movie?
Boy, that's tough.
It's like choosing a child.
Yeah, I think the original, A New Hope, that's the best one by far.
Very good. Okay. Well, stay tuned for our next podcast, and mahalo for listening. Aloha.
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 This Hawaii Sea Grant 321 podcast featured 3 songs: Happiness by bensound.com, Ukulele by bensound.com, and Cute by bensound.com. Find them on iTunes and bensound.com.